This week, I'm joined once again by Mike Manzi, fractional VP of Sales, founder of Official Sales Tips with over 20 million views. Mike, it's good to speak to you again. How are you doing today?
Good, only because I'm here with you. Excited to be here.
Well, bless you, mate. That's very, very kind of you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into this topic. And you obviously were the first name that came up when we decided this is what we're going to be talking about. But this is
Mhm.
sales skills, how to identify core improvement areas. And for this webinar, we're arming you with tips and tricks on how you can improve not just your own, but your whole team's sales skills. So, Mike, my first question to you is what are the key qualities of a high performing sales team?
So, a high performing sales team, there's a lot of qualities to it. So, get your notes out. So, the first are the people that you're hiring. What I find is the people that you're hiring need to have a couple of things about them that are not on their resume. The first is, without a doubt, they need a chip on their shoulder. That chip may come from growing up in hard times. That chip may come up from having a older sibling who is the golden child. The chip may come from getting fired. There's a million reasons, but if they don't have some reason where they feel like they need to prove to themselves that they can do it, whatever that is, they're not going to have that drive to push through hard times. So that's number one. Number two is I actually look for people that, and I know this is going to be controversial, but I look for folks who have done well in school. What I found when I look back, and not like my favorite reps or my mediocre reps or reps that I could gamble on, when I look back at the top rep at every company, which typically is the top rep is doing like 2 to 3 times what the next person's doing, that person every time went to a reasonably good college. They all were getting over a 3.0. Almost all of them were athletes in some capacity, even in a smaller capacity. And they all have chips in their shoulder. So part of it is you want to make sure you have people that, for whatever reason, felt even in high school and in college that they needed to work hard at whatever that task was for whatever reason. I don't know if it really matters for the traditional reasons, but I've just simply seen it to be true. So if you don't have high performing people on the team, what happens when you bring in new people or new change or even just pushes to be more high performing, people start to fold. And you get one person on the team who's like, this sucks. One person who's like, this is kind of annoying, but we try to put up with it. And one person on the team who outwardly is like, yeah, this sucks. But inwardly is like, we got to do this. I wish they would shut up and just do it. And the culture of your team falls apart. You don't know what it is. You think it's your one-on-ones. You think it's your engagement. You think it's because you're remote. It's because you have folks in the team that are not high performers, which make everybody else feel like the vibe of our household is not a high performing household. Most important is the humans. Second thing you need to have is this is like a Maslow's hierarchy. The second thing you need to have is you need to have a manager who makes very clear the expectations, and they're high, not too high. Also makes very clear how to do whatever it is that the people need to be doing. There should be no question in anybody on how to get there. Otherwise, the expectations are too crazy. And they need to be very clearly providing the support. So if this were the Maslow's hierarchy, people need to feel a sense of safety. They need a house, all of that. So if you have support but no expectations, or you have high expectations but no ability to know what it has to get done, you need all three of these pegs to be able to have this team that you are high performers do high performing stuff. The next thing you need to have once you have this team is you need to have the right incentives. So those incentives, I find, you want to basically increase the size of the incentive for every layer of annoyingness or hardness of a task. So, for example, when I come into an organization as a fractional VP, what I typically do, let's say they have a commission rate of 10%, is if they're getting inbound leads and they want outbound leads, I say, well, we have to reduce the commission rate on inbound leads and then increase the commission rate on outbound leads, because inbound is easier, outbound is harder. I'm never going to want to eat my vegetables outbound if I'm getting fed some level of sustenance. Maybe it's not enough, but some level of sustenance from fast food or inbounds. So having the right incentives is a real key. If you have all of these things, the team itself, whatever they're doing, selling, will be a high performing team. So we can talk more about the calls themselves too, but that is how you have the actual team. And I could even go on a whole tangent about more tactical day-to-day stuff, but I'll pause for the time being to ask for a pause for questions.
I'm very pleased that you started that answer, Mike, by saying take your notes because this is going to be comprehensive because
Yeah,
it was hugely comprehensive. So then
happy
how
to
do you
dive deeper into any of it, but yeah, tell me more.
well, I mean, my follow-up question to you was then going to be, so how would you then, because obviously this is all about identifying areas that need improving, how would you assess the current performance of that sales team?
Yeah, this is really cool. So I created what I call the 100 score. The 100 score is 100 times your win rate times your deal size. So what this does is it says if these humans that we have on our team were machines, we wanted to know how many pieces of fabric I put in the machine, or if I give the same amount of fabric in the machine for all these machines, how many pairs of jeans does each machine churn out? And if you had one machine that was churning out 10 and one machine that was churning out 100, you'd probably stop putting fabric into this machine and you'd probably buy like 10 more. So the 100 score, bring us back into what we're talking about, is if I give you 100 leads, how much cash are you going to print out on the back end of that? And how much cash you print out is just a factor of leads times win rate times deal size. So what I find a lot of companies do is they got one rep on the team who closes the biggest deals, but they only close like one deal every couple of months. But they're exciting deals. They're the ones everyone talks about. They're the ones the CEO likes the most. So they get put on the pedestal. But then you go, you're not even really hitting your quota. And you get one guy who does really well, but it's everybody thinks is crap because he's in the best territory. He gets a million leads. And so when you look at the team and you start to say you're top, you're bottom, even if you're equating things to everybody as a percent of quota, people will not feel like it's right. And managers will be able to have a blinder to know what the actual problems are. The 100 score, however, allows you to look at it and simply go, who in the team prints the most money? Who prints the least? Immediately, you can see where are the problems. The problems are in the bottom half, right? Zoom in. The next KPIs you're going to want to be tracking are conversion rates from stage 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5. This allows you to see, okay, I know these 5 reps stink. Where do they stink? And what you'll see is there will be some stage in the process where the conversion rate is like negative 75%. It's like 20%, 80% of people convert to the next one, and 80% to the next one, and then 10% to the next one. You're like, what the hell happened in that middle stage? It's making everybody drop off the funnel. Okay. So that's the one way to look at it. So that's the first way to identify the people, and then identify the part of the people's process, and we're going to change that, right? The other way, and this is more at an org level, what I look at is I look at all of the variables that could impact sales. So at the beginning, when I work with clients that are new and don't have any information, I actually have them add a lot of fields to their CRM. So we can track things like, do they have a CMO, and how long they've been around for, how many employees do they have, or whatever, because a year from now, I'm going to want to slice and dice the data and go, of our highest win rate clients, what's true about them? Oh my God, they all were companies in Iowa. I'm glad we were tracking that, whatever it is. So, we're going to go back to the 100 score, because what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look at every variable against every variable and look at the 100 score. So I'm going to look at, show me all of our deals that were closed in our starter package, our pro package, and our enterprise package, broken down by small companies, medium companies, big companies. And I want to see the 100 score of all these things. One example of what happens when you do this is I worked at a company where we were like, we got to go enterprise. We got to go enterprise. We all agreed. And then I looked at the data and I said, hey, our win rate for companies over 1,000 is so bad that we should never go after them. However, our win rate and deal size has this beautiful sweet spot between 500 and 1,000. It's way higher than everybody else, and we still win them at almost the same rate as everybody else. So instead of trying to get these monster 5,000 person companies, what we need is a bazillion 500 to 1,000 person companies. And that's how we actually grew the enterprise thing, by looking at these variables. So those that's how you do it. You use the 100 score to identify the people, you use the conversion rates to identify the area, and then you use at an organization level 100 score based on every variable possible to identify which variables should you be removing and which ones should you be doubling down on.
I hugely recommend that people watch this one back and take even further notes, Mike, because your answers to this
Yeah,
have
there's a
been
lot in
so,
here. This could be an
so
hour, two
convincing.
hours
Yeah. If only we had that much time, Mike. If only we had that much time.
next time.
Just to bring it back to slightly more talking about personnel, on your team, on
Sure.
your sales team. What do you think? I've got sort of a question in two parts, really. What do you think uh, are the biggest challenges to sales teams in today's environment? And are there any, perhaps it's the same question, asked in a slightly different way. Are there any consistent mistakes that you see people in sales teams making, be that, the SDRs or even, the managers, leaders, that sort of thing?
Yeah. So this will kind of lead, each section will lead to the next year because times have changed much faster than I think managers have been ready for, me included, where it makes sense to me to say, hey, 15 years ago, when I was 18 years ago and I was starting out in sales, it was very like bullpen, some big guy in the sky yelling at everybody, throwing trophies around, saying, are you afraid to be a millionaire? Literally, that was the vibe. And that's not how it is now. But you're like, yeah, that's like 15 years ago, man. But I think even 4 or 5 years ago, outbound worked and it doesn't really work that well right now. Or it does, but it takes a lot of work. The SDR manager, Cognizant, does, I think, the best job of anybody on the planet from this. But for the most part, it's working way less than it has before. And also, buyers have changed weirdly a lot since COVID, but like unrelated to COVID. I think what's happened is a lot of buyers have turned to the next generation. We are now millennials, and we're the ones with budgets. And we want to buy differently than our Gen X and baby boomer counterparts did. So what this means, to get to the point here, is managers think that everything was the way that it was 2 years ago when they managed, or when they were sales rep, or 4 years ago when they were sales rep, when it's actually different. So the challenge is we are living in two different worlds. The sales reps are saying it's harder, and we're going, I don't think so. I was doing this 2 years ago. It wasn't that hard, but it actually was harder, or it is harder. That's the first problem. The second problem is because we have these new buyers, what we're seeing as the big mistakes is buyers do not want to give sales reps objections. Sales reps want objection handling techniques. Sales managers hear a problem and want to give a sales rep some way to overcome objections. But the reality is, what we do, us millennials, we're all people pleasers for whatever reason. So we will on the call be like, this is great. Love this tool. This is really cool. Yeah, I'll bring it back to my team. And then we ghost you. So the training that we should be providing, and what I do with my clients, is a lot around uncovering objections, eliciting objections from people. It's also a lot around underselling. Maybe this isn't the right fit. I'm not sure if we should really do this, because us buyers, millennials, whatever, maybe, I don't even know if it is just millennials, but we've been oversold now so much. Our Instagram everywhere has so many ads on it. So now whenever it seems kind of like I'm selling to you, it pushes us away. So we need to train more on pulling things away and uncovering objections, because otherwise they're going to say, it's good, I like it, or whatever. And those are some of the biggest challenges that I see are causing people to have their deals take longer because they haven't gotten those objections, and causing deals to not close because they haven't gotten those objections.
Can you give us an example of bringing an objection to the call in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best way, like my technique to do this in general, is you exaggerate. So I'm going to say, hey, do you love this? Is this tool exactly what you're looking for? If you had this today, would that be a perfect fit? Are you guys sitting here thinking, holy cow, I'm so impressed. This is exactly what we need, and we're done? When you say that, it'll elicit someone to be like, it's really good. they don't want to commit to it's perfect. They love it, which allows you to then be like, oh, what do you feel like we're missing? What makes it not a 10 out of 10? So it forces them to admit, oh, I don't quite like it, which allows you to then understand. Um, Another example, though, that I think is really important today in particular, buying committees are bigger than they've ever been. And they were big to start, even a few years ago. And so I always recommend that you're saying, hey, if I brought this to your CEO or the other 5 people that are looking at this, what's the pushback you're going to get? Not will you get pushback? What's the pushback you're going to get? I'm assuming the head of operations will get involved. They're usually pretty compliance heavy. What's the pushback they're going to have on this? Hey, didn't somebody already bring in the tool that you're looking for me to replace? If that person works here still, they're going to feel like an idiot if we swap it. So how are we going to overcome that? So I will either offer the generic thing, or I'll try to find specific situations like who's going to push back, or if I find them actually saying something that indicates there might be pushback somewhere, I will literally say it. I just talked to a customer yesterday, and the CEO was bringing me in, but the managers didn't know who I was. So I started the call going, guys, if you guys don't like this, well, you have to move forward because the manager said yes. I like Mike, and they were like, no, we don't have to. I'm like, great. So I was worried they were just going to be forced to like me and forced to say yes. But I'm trying to overcome the potential objection that they're like, I don't like them, and they're going to soft play me out of that. So there's a couple of examples.
That's a really interesting thing that you've said about this a generational change almost of buyers changing in that way. That's probably worth thinking on a bit more, I think, isn't it? But
Yeah.
something else that occurs to me, Mike, something I want to ask you about again, just bringing it back to sales teams, is that obviously in a previous answer you gave, you said like, oh, you've got to make sure that the incentives are high enough and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Something that's always fascinated me is about sales teams is the fact that there's an air of competition, but then there's also a sense of teamwork going on as well. How do you balance those two fairly disparate seeming ideas, like the idea that your sales teams are competing against each other, but still, working together for a collective goal?
So the if let's look at it in two different lenses. One is, let's say you're a frontline sales manager, and one, let's say you're like a VP with multiple teams. As a frontline sales manager, you want to have a little bit of rah happening, not too much, but a little bit of touchy feeliness. So first, I always make sure to get some group values of the team to say, hey, there's multiple teams. Well, we're going to add new people to our team. What do we stand for? When I go interview somebody, what should I be looking for to make sure that they're a good fit for our team? And I give some prompts like, how do we handle problems? How do we handle people on our team, off our team? How do we handle our people have questions? And that's sort of people will answer. What I find is they typically answer the right way, like good people. We help our teammates, we whatever. And in saying that and then showing it in every Monday meeting of like, these are the values, these are the things we care about, and they're what you told me, it reinforces the idea that we're a team. I had a company once, for example, where everybody hated marketing, big surprise. And so what I said in there, I talked to our team and I was like, what do you guys feel about people who are off our team? What do we do? And what do you guys do? How do you think we respond when there's big challenges? And what everybody came to conclude in that meeting was some version of, we control what we can control. So I was like, done. Every time someone would say, oh, marketing stinks, I go, hey, we can control what we can't control, right? Nothing we can do about it. So let's see what we can do. And you actually saw a shift. I remember specifically one meeting, somebody was complaining and somebody else, not me, jumped in and was like, hey, stop with that. Like, we can't control that. And I was like, oh my God, we're doing it. So anyways, having a little bit of values is really important so that they do feel like they are a unit of some kind. Names or cultures, we use certain names for things. We get Fridays off, whatever. Just certain things that you do and you only do them if you're on my team. That makes it feel like I have a team. Mm. But then when it comes to competition, what I typically do is not everybody's competing with everybody. The top rep is competing with the number 2 rep. That middle rep is competing with some other rep that you don't know about. The bottom rep is competing with himself. So instead of just putting everyone in the stack rank and being like, Joe at the bottom, try to get to be like Johnny at the top. You're more wanting in your one-on-ones to be talking to people and go, hey, Jake, like I feel like you and Johnny are kind of really similar reps. He's been kind of beating you out the last couple of months. What do you think's going on there? And that's competition that actually matters to Jake in this example. Whereas just a leaderboard being like, you guys should all compete, try to be the best, doesn't work because I'm not competing with those other people. Now, zooming out to you own multiple teams. Here, it's really the same thing with a small tweak, which is that you want to do everything just on the whole team. So instead of saying like Johnny, you're competing with Jake, kind of, it's like team one, you're kind of versus team two. The other thing that I've seen though is a lot of times people are just competing across like their level across all the teams. So like the number one guy is only looking at on the leaderboards of the number one guy on the other teams. So you can either do like team versus team kind of things or people versus people. I find that people versus people is better because typically they're like, whatever, that team sucks. Like, we're like, there's some guy in the team who's really loud. And so they're like, I don't want to deal with that team. But again, you want to make sure you have values that span across the team. And the most important thing with those values, which I haven't mentioned yet, actually, though, is you need to hire and fire and promote according to your values. If person on team B gets promoted who shouldn't have been promoted, the top performer on team D gets pissed. And if person on team A gets fired, but 6 months later than they should have gotten fired, top rep on person on team B is like, oh, I can slack off here. So it's really important that you manage that.
I got you. And for the record, I do think we should fire Jake and Johnny because they have been letting the side down. Mike, I'm going to start to wrap up our conversation. You've once again, as always, offered up some incredible value and insights to our audience here. But just before I come to you with a final question, many superheroes have the power of invisibility. So wouldn't it be great to be able to reveal the invisible B2B visitors to your website? Lead Forensics is a software which does just that. It identifies visitors to your website, showing you their customer journey, what links they've clicked on, pages they've visited, and all in real time. To book your obligation-free demo or to book your obligation-free trial or book a demo with us, please let me know on the poll, which is on screen now, and I will leave this up as we come to the end of our conversation with Mike here. And if I could also ask you to fill out the webinar feedback survey, which is just underneath, I'd hugely appreciate hearing what you enjoyed about this webinar. So again, Mike, you've offered us incredible insight into you've offered incredible insight into sales improvement areas. If I could just ask you for one final top tip, one golden rule for everybody to take away from this conversation today, what would that top tip be?
Great question. Wow. One tip to improve your sales team would be, oh man.
If I can limit you to just one, if you need to do two or three.
No, that's fine. Limit me to one. That's what it should be. One tip to fix it, to improve the sales team would be, ask your sales team, what are 3 reasons this customer would not buy today? So that they can understand what objections there might be, whether they're known or unknown, and either try to make sure that they are known or try to overcome them before the person goes to you.
Fantastic stuff. Mike Manzi, thank you so much for sharing your B2B superpowers with us today. Remember to keep an eye on Lead Forensic socials for news of our upcoming webinars, and we will see you again very, very soon. Mike, thank you so much.
Thank you. Talk soon.